In the noisy streets of Lagos, where survival is sold at the price of a newspaper, a boy unknowingly stumbles into the darkest secret of a billionaire empire. His life, simple, fragile, and ordinary, collides with wealth, corruption, and power so vast it can rewrite nations. What he sees in the shadows is not just a secret. It is a truth that could destroy a dynasty. But in a world where loyalty is bought and silence is demanded, will he speak, or will the secret consume him? In the restless heartbeat of Lagos, as the first light strikes the tin roofs, a boy dashes through crowded streets, newspapers flying under his arm, unaware that by nightfall his eyes will witness what the world was never meant to see. The city of Lagos awakens like a restless lion, roaring with danfo horns, the cries of market women, and the smell of roasted corn rising with the dawn. Among the chaos runs Ifeanyi, his bare feet slapping against cracked pavements, newspapers clutched tight beneath his arm. At just 15, his thin frame carries more than papers. He carries the weight of survival. His eyes, too young for the shadows they have seen, dart through the crowd as his voice rings out. Daily headlines, latest news, grab your copy. Each shout is not just a call for buyers, but a fight against hunger, a cry against poverty, a prayer that today will be kinder than yesterday. Ifeanyi's life has been carved by hardship. His father, once a mechanic with calloused hands, died suddenly when Ifeanyi was only 10, leaving behind nothing but debts and memories. His mother, worn yet resilient, works long hours in a small food canteen, stirring pots of jollof rice and frying plantain for workers who never know her name. His younger brother, Chika, lies sick at home, coughing through nights that feel longer than years. Every naira Ifeanyi earns helps to keep medicine in Chika's veins and food on their table. But Ifeanyi is not just a boy of survival. He is a boy of dreams. Every newspaper he sells is more than paper and ink. It is a piece of the world he wishes to belong to. He reads headlines as if they were textbooks, tracing every line, practicing the cadence of news anchors, whispering to himself, "One day, I will not just sell the news. I will write it." The sun rises higher, painting Ojuelegba in gold and chaos. Danfos screech to halts, conductors hanging dangerously from doors. Traders spread their goods, second-hand clothes, phone chargers, roasted suya. The smell of dust mixes with pepper and exhaust. Ifeanyi weaves through it all, shouting louder than the noise, his stack of papers slowly thinning. Yet destiny often hides in plain sight. That same morning, his wandering feet take him further than usual. Past the shouting traders and honking buses, his path curves into the glittering heart of Victoria Island. Here, glass towers pierce the sky, and sleek cars glide silently over asphalt roads. If Ojuelegba is survival, Victoria Island is spectacle. It is wealth at its most untouchable. Private jets humming in the distance, tall gates concealing pools of blue water, bodyguards in suits pacing like shadows. And at the heart of this kingdom stands the empire of Alade Omoboriowo. A man whispered about in boardrooms and worshipped in tabloids, Alade is the crown jewel of Nigeria's digital age, founder of a cryptocurrency empire that spreads from Lagos to Dubai, owner of skyscrapers that glitter in the night, collector of art so rare it hangs like royalty on his walls. He is seen at international fashion shows, seated in the front row beside models and presidents. His name is a currency, his presence a spectacle, his ambition a storm. Ifeanyi stands at the base of one of Alade's towers, newspapers sweating under his arms, staring up at glass walls that reflect the sun like fire. For a moment, he wonders what life looks like inside, beyond the tinted windows where carpets swallow footsteps and chandeliers rain gold. Fate plays its hand. For days that follow, Ifeanyi begins selling newspapers near the skyscraper, drawn unconsciously to the magnetic pull of the place. Businessmen in suits sometimes buy copies from him, their polished shoes clicking past. He feels invisible in their world, yet strangely tied to it, like a shadow that refuses to leave. Then comes the evening that changes everything. The streets begin to empty, and Lagos dons her night cloak, neon lights flickering, exhaust fumes replaced by the aroma of grilled fish. Ifeanyi lingers near the skyscraper, counting his leftover papers in the shadows of the gate. The hum of the city feels softer here, broken only by the deep growl of an approaching convoy. A sleek black car rolls to a halt. Doors swing open. Alade Omoboriowo himself steps out, tall, imposing, his suit hugging him like it was sewn by destiny. Beside him is a stranger, a foreign investor, silver-haired, eyes sharp, briefcase in hand. Their voices, low and urgent, drift into the night. Curiosity is a dangerous drug. Ifeanyi edges closer, pressing against the wall, his heart hammering like a drum. Through the tinted glass doors, he watches as they step into the lobby, security bowing with robotic precision. Then, something happens. Alade places the briefcase on the marble table, his fingers tapping a code. With a click, it opens. For a heartbeat, light reflects off its contents. Papers, digital drives, documents stacked with secrets too heavy for the world. And in that split second, through the glass, Ifeanyi sees it. His breath freezes, his fingers grip the wall. Whatever lies in that briefcase does not belong to a boy selling newspapers. It belongs to the kind of men who rewrite nations in silence. Ifeanyi's eyes widen, and his chest tightens. What flashes inside the briefcase is not just wealth, not just power. It is something far more dangerous. And now he has seen it. Some secrets shine brighter than gold, but burn heavier than fire. Through the tinted glass, Ifeanyi's young eyes darted over the open briefcase. What he saw did not belong to the world of newspaper boys. Inside lay not just money, but power carved into files. Digital hard drives glowing faintly with encrypted codes, papers marked with foreign seals, and stacks of documents that spoke the language of empires. The foreign investor leaned closer to Alade, his accented voice cutting like a blade. If these files ever surface, the sanctions will bury you. Even your allies won't protect you. Alade chuckled softly, his confidence filling the room like perfume. His voice, smooth yet dangerous, slid through the glass. Sanctions are for nations that play fair. I built ghost accounts across Africa. Whole markets dance when I move one finger. Governments call me before they call their presidents. The weight of those words slammed into Ifeanyi's chest. Ghost accounts? Manipulating markets? It was too vast for his teenage mind, yet he understood one thing. This was not business. This was the invisible theft of nations. Sweat dampened his shirt as he pressed deeper into the shadows. He dared not breathe too loud. His small frame trembled, his mind screaming, "Run! Run before they see you!" Slowly he backed away, the sound of his footsteps swallowed by Lagos night. And when he finally broke into a sprint, his papers scattered behind him like fallen leaves. That night, the city outside his window sang its usual song, hawkers shouting, generators humming, danfos honking. But inside Ifeanyi's little room, the noise was drowned out by the storm in his heart. He lay on the mat beside his coughing brother Chika, who wheezed through another fevered night. Ifeanyi stared at the cracked ceiling. The image of that glowing briefcase seared into his mind. How can one man hold so much power? How can one boy carry such a secret? He closed his eyes, but Alade's voice echoed, "Markets dance when I move one finger." Ifeanyi turned to his side, watching his brother curl into their mother's wrapper for warmth. Every cough stabbed his heart like a blade. This was why he worked, why he shouted headlines till his throat burned, for Chika, for Mama, for survival. But now survival meant silence, for if he spoke of what he saw, who would believe him? He was just a boy, a seller of words written by others. No one listened to the voice of a street child. And worse, if the wrong ears heard, it wouldn't just be his voice silenced. His family could vanish into shadows wealth often created. Sleep never came, only whispers of fear, wrapping him tighter than his thin blanket. Morning arrived like it always did, unforgiving and loud. Lagos didn't pause for secrets. The air was thick with exhaust fumes, frying Akara and ambition. Men still chased danfos, Women still bargained for pepper. Children still ran barefoot. Life moved as though nothing had shifted. But inside Ifeanyi, everything had shifted. He tied his worn slippers, picked up the fresh stack of newspapers, and stepped into the street. His mouth shouted headlines, but his mind screamed another story, the one he dared not speak. Each copy he sold was a reminder that truth lived in his chest like a ticking bomb. As he handed papers to rushing men in suits, he found himself scanning their faces. Did they know? Were they part of Alade's world? Could anyone here even imagine the things he had seen behind tinted glass? A boy selling papers could never move markets. Yet, he had seen the man who could. Elsewhere in Victoria Island, Alade Omoboriowo stirred his morning coffee in a glass cup imported from Italy. His office glowed with floor-to-ceiling windows, sunlight reflecting off steel, and ambition. Yet, something unsettled him. The foreign investor's warning lingered like smoke. But it was not fear of sanctions that made Alade frown. It was something else, the faint sensation of being watched last night. His mind replayed the entrance, the lobby, the shadows near the gate. Years of power had sharpened his instincts. He knew when eyes followed him, when breaths lingered too long. Turning to his personal aide, a tall man dressed in a charcoal suit, Alade's voice was calm but heavy. Last night something wasn't right. Someone was there who shouldn't have been. The aide nodded, pen hovering over his tablet. "You want me to check the guest?" Alade shook his head slowly, his lips curving into a smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Not the guest, the eyes. The walls have eyes in Lagos, and I want every one of them accounted for." He sipped his coffee, then placed the cup down with deliberate finality. His tone sharpened, each word cutting through the air like glass. "Find me every pair of eyes that lingered last night." And somewhere across town, as Ifeanyi shouted headlines to the indifferent crowd, he had no idea the billionaire's gaze had already begun to sweep toward him. Power doesn't chase shadows, it hunts them until they break. The streets of Lagos had always been Ifeanyi's playground. From Ojuelegba to CMS, he knew every shortcut, every corner where traffic slowed enough for him to sell his papers. But lately, the city no longer felt like a home. It felt like a trap. It began with the black SUV. At first, he thought nothing of it. Lagos was full of big cars, politicians, businessmen, and show-offs with tinted windows. But this one was different. It wasn't rushing like others. It crawled. Every time he shouted headlines at a junction, the SUV lingered at the edge of his vision. When he darted into narrow streets to cut through traffic, the SUV always reappeared, 2 corners later, as if it was tethered to his shadow. By the third day, his skin prickled at its presence. Then came the man at the bus stop. Dressed in a black suit, far too clean for the dusty air of Ojuelegba, the man stood still, not waiting for a bus, not speaking to anyone. His eyes scanned the street like a predator surveying prey. When Ifeanyi passed with his stack of papers, the man's gaze lingered, sharp, unblinking. Ifeanyi swallowed hard, pretending not to notice, but the weight of that stare burned through him. By evening, paranoia gripped him like fever. The boy who once sprinted through Lagos with careless freedom now felt every footstep watched, every corner compromised. The joy of running barefoot, shouting headlines with pride, dissolved into caution. Even the Danfo conductors, who once teased him playfully, seemed now like strangers, ready to whisper his name into the wrong ear. At the newsstand, gossip traveled like wildfire. A group of vendors gathered, their voices low but urgent. "Alade's empire dey grow too fast," one muttered. "You no fit tell me say e no get secret deals underground." Another laughed, shaking his head. "My brother, forget. The man the genius. Cryptocurrency, real estate, fashion. Him dey everywhere. Na the kind person, way dey destined to rule Africa." Yet another lowered his voice. "But power too dey dangerous. I hear say, the man get enemies, way dey disappear overnight." Ifeanyi stood apart, pretending to fold his papers neatly. But inside, their words scratched at his heart. Praise and fear, 2 faces of the same coin. He wanted to shout, You don't know what I saw. But his lips stayed sealed. He was just a boy, and boys who spoke against giants didn't last long in this city. That night, silence betrayed him. At home, his mother stirred stew in their small pot, her tired eyes flicking toward him as he sat restless on the floor. Chineke, Ife, she said softly. Why you they shake like say something they chase you? Did you fight again? He forced a smile. No, Mama. Just tired. But her eyes saw more. Mothers always see more. Later, when Chika coughed himself awake, the little boy tugged at Ifeanyi's shirt. His voice was weak but curious. Brother, that tall building, the one with the glass, do the people inside eat food like us, or do they eat gold? Ifeanyi froze. His brother's question pierced deeper than any knife. What could he answer? That inside those walls, men weren't eating gold, but swallowing nations whole. That in those towers, secrets heavier than fire sat in briefcases guarded by shadows. He only ruffled Chika's hair and whispered, They eat like us, maybe even less. But in his heart, he vowed, never again. Never again would his feet carry him near that skyscraper. That world was poison, and he had tasted enough to know survival meant distance. He carried that vow like armor into the next day. But Lagos has a way of bending destinies no matter how tightly one clings to choice. It happened in a blink. The late afternoon sun burned orange over Ojuelegba as Ifeanyi counted his change beside the newsstand. The familiar roar of engines filled the air. But then, a convoy of sleek black cars cut through traffic with ease, windows tinted, chrome gleaming. His heart skipped. He recognized them instantly. Alade's convoy. The vehicles slowed near him. Time seemed to stop. Vendors hushed. Pedestrians stared. A rear window rolled down just slightly, enough for a hand to extend. A hand carrying an envelope sealed with gold trim. The man in the passenger seat, dressed in a sharp suit, leaned out and handed it to Ifeanyi without a word. His eyes, expressionless, pinned the boy in place. Ifeanyi's fingers trembled as he accepted it, the weight of the envelope heavier than his entire stack of newspapers. The convoy pulled away, engines growling like lions retreating into the jungle. He stood frozen in the dust, the world rushing past him as if nothing monumental had just happened. Slowly, carefully, he peeled back the seal. Inside lay a single card, glossy and glowing with golden letters. You are invited to the private mentorship program of Alade Omoboriowo. Ifeanyi's breath caught. He had vowed never to step near that building again. But destiny had just carved a different path, one lined with gold and danger. Invitations from billionaires are not blessings, they are tests. The golden card lay on Ifeanyi's small wooden table, like a living thing, glowing under the dim bulb of their one-room home. His mother's hands trembled as she picked it up again and again, reading the inscription as though her eyes might conjure new words each time. My son, she whispered, eyes shining. Do you know what this means? God has opened a door for us, a door no one in our family ever entered. But Ifeanyi's heart pounded with unease. His vow echoed in his chest. Never again near that tower. He thought of the briefcase, of the whispered power plays, of the SUV that stalked him. He wanted to refuse. He wanted to throw the card into the cooking fire and let it turn to ash. Yet his mother, weary from endless toil at the canteen, clasped his shoulders with hope. Don't let fear hold you. If a man like Alade chooses you, it means you are meant for more than these streets. This is destiny, Ife. Destiny. Her faith felt heavier than his fear. He looked at Chika, who slept peacefully for once, his breathing steadier after the day's medicine. Could he deny them this chance? Refusing felt like betraying his family. And so, against his instincts, Ifeanyi prepared himself for the world of glass and gold. The skyscraper loomed taller than before, its windows reflecting Lagos sunlight like molten steel. Security gates swung open with precision as Ifeanyi, dressed in his only decent shirt, was ushered through polished doors into a world he never imagined stepping into. The lobby was marble, endless, echoing footsteps like a cathedral of wealth, From there, they guided him into a vast conference hall where rows of polished seats awaited. He wasn't alone. Dozens of other youths filled the space. Boys in ironed shirts, girls with braids tied neatly, all wide-eyed, all clutching. Their invitations, like passports, to a new life. The air buzzed with nervous excitement. Then silence. A side door opened, and in strode Alade Omoboriowo. His presence swallowed the room. Tall, immaculately dressed in a tailored navy suit, his cufflinks glimmered like stars. The hall shifted under the weight of his charisma. His smile was warm but measured, his eyes sharp enough to pierce walls. He did not walk, he glided, as though the ground itself respected him. When he spoke, his voice was velvet over steel. "You are not here by chance," he said, pacing slowly. "You are here because Africa is at a turning point. The old world is dying. The new world is digital, invisible, unstoppable. Cryptocurrency, artificial intelligence, real estate, this is where the future lives. And the question is, will you live in it or be ruled by it?" The youths nodded eagerly, their eyes burning with hope. Ifeanyi sat stiff, his palms sweating, every word both mesmerizing and suffocating. Alade's speech painted visions of a digital Africa, free from old corruption. But underneath his rhetoric, Ifeanyi sensed something darker. Ambition so vast, it devoured everything. When the applause thundered, Ifeanyi clapped too, but his heart was divided. Awe pulled one way, fear the other. Later, after the program ended and the youths dispersed in excited chatter, a hand tapped Ifeanyi's shoulder. A security man whispered, "The chairman wants to see you." He was led down a quiet corridor into a smaller office, intimate, golden lit. There, Alade sat alone, his jacket removed, his shirt sleeves folded as if he were just another man. Yet the aura remained, commanding, calculating. "Ifeanyi," he said softly, pronouncing the name as though he'd known it forever. "Sit." The boy obeyed, his knees almost buckling as he lowered himself into the leather chair. "Where are you from?" Alade asked, his eyes steady, unblinking. "Ojuelegba, sir." "And your family?" "My mother. She runs a canteen. My brother is sick." Alade leaned back, steepling his fingers. His gaze was so sharp Ifeanyi felt his skin peel away. "You are young, but your eyes, they have seen things. I like that. Life is not about what you are given. It is about what you dare to take." Silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. Ifeanyi's throat tightened, as though Alade was reading the truth he carried in his chest. Then, suddenly, the tension broke. Alade clapped his hands. A servant entered, placing a sleek black laptop on the table. Another carried a box containing a brand-new smartphone. Alade smiled, his warmth returning like the flick of a switch. "Gifts," he said, "for your future. Use them well. And know this, loyalty is the currency of survival." The words sank into Ifeanyi's bones. They were not advice. They were a chain. He bowed his head, whispered thank you, and accepted the gifts with shaking hands. But inside, he felt himself trapped in a gilded net, one spun not with rope, but with favors too heavy to return. That night, back in his small room, Ifeanyi placed the laptop on their rickety table. His mother beamed at it like it was a miracle. "See, Ife, I told you, destiny." But Ifeanyi only nodded, his chest tight. When the house finally fell quiet, he opened the sleek machine. The screen lit the room with a cold blue glow. It purred alive like it belonged to another world entirely. Minutes later, a notification blinked in the corner. An encrypted file had arrived, marked with a digital seal. It was sent directly from Alade's system. Ifeanyi's breath caught. The laptop he thought was a gift was in fact a doorway, and on the other side waited the billionaire's shadow. A gift that whispers too much becomes a curse. The laptop gleamed on Ifeanyi's rickety table like a forbidden treasure. Its black surface seemed to breathe in the darkness, reflecting his thin face and trembling fingers. He hesitated before lifting the lid again. When the screen lit up, he felt as though he had opened a portal, not into opportunity, but into a labyrinth. Inside, Folders stretched like a hidden galaxy, most locked, others buried in complex codes. But curiosity, always his weakness, pulled him deeper. One folder opened with a simple click, revealing files filled with numbers, charts, and cryptic symbols. His eyes widened. Financial reports, offshore accounts, encrypted blockchain networks. His chest tightened. These weren't ordinary documents. They were blueprints of power. He scrolled through records that traced billions shifting invisibly from one country to another, accounts that seemed alive, dancing from Africa to Europe to Asia with every blink. And then the realization hit him. Alade wanted him to see this. It wasn't generosity, it was a test. The gift was a mirror placed before him to reflect who he truly was. Would he be loyal, silent, obedient? Or would he break? Fear washed over him like cold rain. Was this a trap? Was the billionaire watching him through invisible eyes even now? He slammed the laptop shut, gasping. The glow vanished, but the weight of what he'd seen lingered. Sleep came only in fragments that night, his dreams haunted by spinning currencies and voices whispering, "Loyalty is the currency of survival." The next morning, he carried the laptop to school like it was cursed. He noticed the stares before he even sat down. Word had spread. He was no longer just the newspaper boy. He was Alade's boy. Some classmates approached with forced smiles, asking for favors, whispering questions about scholarships and job opportunities. Others looked at him with jealousy, sharp enough to wound. To them, his mere presence had become a reminder of their own insignificance. For the first time in his life, Ifeanyi felt the strange, bitter taste of power. Yet it wasn't sweet. It burned. During lunch, he caught sight of a silver sedan parked across from the school. Two men sat inside, not pretending to blend in. The next day, it was a different car, but always there, waiting, watching. His heart dropped whenever his eyes met theirs. The gift wasn't freedom. It was surveillance. At home, however, the story was different. His mother smiled wider these days. Money arrived for rent, slipped quietly through channels that led back to Alade. Medicine for Chica appeared at their doorstep, bottles that might as well have been life itself. For once, his mother's face was not etched with worry lines. "See, Ify," she said one evening as she stirred stew with a humming voice. "This man is a blessing. Don't let your fear spoil it. Hold on to him. He's lifting us." Ifeanyi forced a smile, but inside, he felt chains tightening. The more his family benefited, the more he was bound. At night, when the city lights flickered like restless stars, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His heart longed for another life. He imagined newspapers carrying his name across front pages. "Newspaper boy unmasks billionaire's empire." The fantasy burned bright in his chest. But reality was crueler. Reality was the shadow of SUVs following him, the invisible eyes in every corner, the weight of secrets pressing him silent. One humid afternoon, his phone buzzed. A message, "Report to the mansion." His stomach twisted. He told his mother it was another mentorship meeting, and she blessed him before he left. The mansion towered above him, its glass walls gleaming against the fading light. Inside, marble floors stretched endlessly, reflecting golden chandeliers. Security men bowed their heads slightly as he passed, though their eyes remained sharp. He was led into a lounge where Alade waited, seated on a velvet chair, sipping wine from a crystal glass. The billionaire's smile was calm, almost paternal. "Ifeanyi," he said warmly, gesturing for him to sit. "You've adjusted well. I can see it in your eyes. You're beginning to understand the rhythm of power." Ifeanyi nodded, forcing his lips into a smile. Inside, his heart raced. But Alade wasn't alone. A moment later, another figure entered. She moved with quiet grace, her steps measured, her gown flowing like water. Her face was beautiful, but distant, framed by braids that caught the light. Her expression was unreadable, her presence commanding in its stillness. Alade stood, pride flickering in his voice. "Meet my daughter, Kanyinsola." Her eyes lingered on Ifeanyi, studying him as though she could read every secret he carried. She gave a faint nod, not of welcome, but of acknowledgment. Something about her presence unsettled him more than Alade's piercing gaze. She seemed both part of this empire and separate from it, as though her silence hid storms yet to come. As Ifeanyi sat frozen, the air heavy with unspoken tension, the laptop in his bag buzzed again. A new encrypted file blinked onto the screen, sent directly from Alade's system. Between wealth and innocence lies a dangerous friendship. The first time Ifeanyi truly spoke to Kanyinsola Omoboriowo, he realized that behind her elegance was a storm waiting to break. She was 22, her education polished by elite schools abroad, her style effortless in silk and subtle gold. Yet when she spoke, her tone carried a sharpness that cut through the walls of her father's empire. Unlike her father's commanding presence, Kanyinsola's rebellion was quiet but relentless. She did not smile easily, nor did she hide her disdain for the world Alade had built. To her, the chandeliers and glass towers were not trophies, but cages. "You're lucky," she told Ifeanyi one evening, as they stood near the balcony overlooking Lagos, the city glittering like a restless constellation below. "You can still pretend to be free. Me? I was born in chains made of gold." Her words lingered with him. He had expected arrogance, but found rebellion. He had expected distance, but found curiosity. Their conversations became longer, stretching into stolen moments in corners of the mansion or during Alade's endless business meetings. Ifeanyi spoke cautiously, revealing just enough to keep her interest, but never the full truth of what he'd seen. Yet even those fragments pulled her closer. She studied him like one would study an unfinished painting. "My father never does charity," she warned, her eyes steady. "Remember that. Every gift has a price, and that price is always more than you can afford." Her words pressed heavily on his heart. He thought of the laptop glowing in the darkness of his home, of the encrypted files that still whispered secrets to him at night. Was he already paying a price too steep to survive? One evening, as the city outside buzzed with night markets and neon lights, Kanyinsola leaned closer, her voice low, urgent. "My father is not satisfied with money anymore. He's moving into something else, something worse." "What do you mean?" Ifeanyi asked, his voice nearly breaking. "Artificial intelligence surveillance," she replied. Her expression darkened as she explained. "He wants to build systems that monitor entire populations. Cameras, online footprints, financial data, all tied together. Imagine a government that doesn't just rule people, but owns their every breath." Ifeanyi's breath caught. He had thought Alade's power lived in offshore accounts and cryptocurrency, but this was control of the invisible world, the kind of control no leader could resist. "That's impossible," he whispered. Her laugh was bitter. "Impossible? My father doesn't believe in impossible. He believes in inevitable." The thought sank deep, wrapping around Ifeanyi's chest. If Alade controlled markets and data, then he wasn't just a billionaire. He was an emperor in a world where nations bowed to digital crowns. Despite the danger, their bond deepened. Ifeanyi found in Kanyinsola something he hadn't expected: understanding. She was wealthy, yes, but her loneliness mirrored his own. She envied his freedom to walk Lagos streets unguarded, to laugh without the burden of a family empire pressing down. He, in turn, envied her access to knowledge and the boldness she carried, even under her father's shadow. Sometimes they laughed quietly, sharing small stories: her mischief at boarding school, his struggles shouting headlines in the heat of Ojuelegba. Other times, silence hung between them, charged with tension neither could name. It was friendship, yes, but there was also something unspoken beneath it, something that frightened them both. But in Alade's empire, nothing stayed hidden for long. The billionaire's eyes, sharp as hawks, noticed the subtle glances, the stolen moments. One afternoon, as he walked Ifeanyi through his office lined with rare African art, he stopped abruptly. "Stay focused," Alade said, his voice calm, yet edged with iron. His hand rested on Ifeanyi's shoulder, heavy like a warning. "Distractions ruin vision, and I chose you because I see vision in you. Do not disappoint me." The weight of his gaze made Ifeanyi's throat dry. It wasn't a request. It was a command. From that moment, Ifeanyi felt walls close around him. Every conversation with Kanyinsola carried new risk. Every glance over his shoulder reminded him that even in laughter, they were watched. And yet, he could not pull away. The chain between them had been forged too strongly. Two captives, one of poverty, one of privilege, bound by a shared desire to escape the grip of Alade Omoboriowo. One late evening, as the mansion quieted and the city's noise softened into background hum, Ifeanyi wandered near the library. The door was ajar, voices drifting into the hall. He froze when he recognized Kanyinsola's voice, softer than usual, but edged with fire. To a friend on the phone, she whispered fiercely, "One day, I'll destroy everything my father built." Ifeanyi's blood chilled. The billionaire's daughter was not just a reluctant witness. She was a hidden flame, threatening to ignite the empire from within. And now, he stood at the edge of her fire. A daughter's rebellion is the billionaire's blind spot. Ifeanyi's world shifted the night Kanyinsola revealed her secret. They sat beneath the warm glow of a chandelier, the mansion quiet, except for the distant hum of generators. She leaned closer, her voice a whisper sharp enough to cut glass. "You think I sit here and watch him rule?" she asked. "No, I fight. Just not with guns or politics." Her phone flickered in her hand, screen glowing with coded messages. Then she showed him a hidden online channel, buried beneath layers of anonymity. The posts were fiery, exposing corruption in government contracts, tracing suspicious financial flows, questioning the very billionaires the world idolized. The words carried weight, sharp and unrelenting, and though they never named Alade directly, the shadows pointed toward him. "I run this," Kanyinsola confessed, her eyes locked on his. "It's the only place I breathe freely, the only place his power cannot silence me." Ifeanyi's chest tightened. He should have walked away, should have pretended he heard nothing. But instead, curiosity tethered him. "Help me," she said. "You have access, files, codes, reports. You're closer to him now than even I am. With your eyes and my platform, we can show Africa what monsters wear suits of gold." Her words stirred something dangerous in him. That night, as he lay on his mat in their small home, Ifeanyi stared at the cracked ceiling, torn apart inside. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. "Alade is a blessing," while his own heart beat with unease. He remembered Chika's fragile breaths, the medicine that came because of Alade's generosity. Could he risk all of it? But then another image came. Alade, his voice smooth but venomous, boasting, "Markets dance when I move one finger." Ifeanyi understood. Survival was safe, but justice was louder. The war began in whispers. Hidden cafes became their meeting ground. They chose small places at odd hours. Cafes where generators hummed louder than conversations, where tired waiters barely noticed two young people huddled over laptops. Kanyinsola taught him the art of disguise online. VPNs, ghost accounts, encrypted chats. She slid USB drives into his hands, whispering, "Copy what you can, whenever you can." The first time he transferred files from his laptop to the drive, his hands shook so badly the progress bar blurred before his eyes. Encrypted reports, hidden financial ledgers, blockchain networks, his fingers carried secrets worth billions. And slowly, those secrets became weapons. Kanyinsola's channel posted them in fragments. Never too much at once. Never obvious, always masked under broader stories of corruption. Yet each piece drew attention. Bloggers began citing their work. Twitter threads went viral. Anonymous posts stirred questions in universities, radio stations, and among restless youth. For the first time, Ifeanyi felt powerful, not because he carried newspapers, but because he carried truth. But empires do not bleed quietly, Alade noticed. At board meetings, his calm demeanor began to crack. He slammed fists on tables, accused rivals of sabotage, demanded loyalty from allies. His eyes grew darker, sharper. "Someone is playing games with me," he told his closest advisors, "and games end with losers." Yet, for all his suspicion, his gaze never fell on Ifeanyi. To Alade, the boy was still the grateful protégé, too insignificant to scheme, too young to betray. That ignorance became Ifeanyi's only shield. But the double life crushed him. By day, he shouted headlines at bus stops and nodded obediently at Alade's lessons on power. By night, he slipped into shadows, whispering secrets to Kanyinsola, his heart thundering with fear. Each keystroke felt like treason, each post felt like a stone hurled at a giant. And yet, the fire in Kanyinsola's eyes pushed him forward. "If we don't act," she told him one night in a cafe, her hands trembling but her voice steady, "his grip on Africa will be absolute. He won't just own money, he'll own minds. Do you want to grow up in a world where one man owns your every move?" Ifeanyi said nothing, but the answer screamed inside him. Then came the explosion. One morning, Ifeanyi woke to the sound of shouting outside his window. The neighborhood buzzed like a disturbed hive. Radios blared, vendors waved newspapers higher than their heads. He rushed to the corner stand, his heart pounding. And there it was. Their channel had gone viral. Screens flashed with headlines. Anonymous group exposes secret billionaire networks. Twitter trends carried hashtags demanding investigations. Youth and universities quoted lines from their posts. Even international blogs picked up fragments, dissecting the leaks like holy scripture. It was everywhere, on buses, on radios, in whispered gossip on street corners. For the first time, Ifeanyi's dream had touched reality. He was not just shouting headlines anymore. He was creating them. But as he clutched the paper in his trembling hands, his stomach dropped. The empire of Alade Omoboriowo had just been wounded, and men like him did not bleed quietly. When truth breaks the surface, the sea becomes restless. The leaks rippled across Lagos like wildfire. Newspapers screamed with headlines tracing hidden wealth. Blogs dissected offshore accounts tied to nameless corporations. Radio stations buzzed with hosts, debating whether billionaires had finally been cornered. Even the international press dipped their pens into the chaos. Markets trembled. Investors panicked. Stocks connected to Alade's empire dipped overnight, their charts red with fear. Whispers swirled in offices and markets alike. Was the golden man of Victoria Island crumbling? And in the middle of it all stood Ifeanyi, holding a stack of newspapers that carried the very words he had helped unleash. His hands trembled as he sold copies, shouting, "Read the news! Billionaire's empire exposed." The irony burned through him. For years, he had sold other men's stories. Now, for the first time, the words he cried belonged to him. He had helped write history, but victory was short-lived. Alade moved faster than the storm. Within days, glossy billboards appeared across the city. Alade Omoboriowo, for Africa, for the future. Television stations aired footage of him cutting ribbons at schools, handing out scholarships, standing beside mothers whose children he promised to sponsor. He appeared in churches, kneeling humbly as pastors prayed for his success. Charity drives exploded overnight, bags of rice and cartons of oil distributed in slums, paid for by the Omoboriowo Foundation. His name was sung in siya marketplaces, not as villain, but as savior. The man who had been accused of theft, transformed into a benevolent king before their very eyes. "Do you see?" Kanyinsola muttered bitterly one evening, pacing their secret meeting place. "Truth doesn't destroy men like him. It feeds them. He takes exposure and turns it into a stage." Ifeanyi sat still, his fists clenched. He had thought the world would recoil at the corruption. Instead, it clapped for Alade's generosity. That was when he realized the true currency of power. It wasn't just money. It was storytelling. Whoever controlled the narrative controlled the people. The more the world doubted him, the louder Alade praised Ifeanyi. At a gala held in the skyscraper's glittering atrium, Alade took the stage, cameras flashing, the air thick with perfume and wealth. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, placing a hand on Ifeanyi's shoulder, "this boy is proof of what we fight for. From the streets of Ojuelegba to the halls of promise, he is the future, my protégé." The applause roared. Photographers captured Ifeanyi's nervous smile, immortalizing him in glossy magazines. But inside, Ifeanyi felt like a bird in a golden cage. The more Alade lifted him publicly, the tighter the bars closed around him. How could he fight a man who turned even his enemies into footnotes? Back in the quiet of their meetings, Kanyinsola grew restless. "This isn't working," she said, slamming her laptop shut one night in frustration. "Our leaks have become his campaign slogans. We need more. Something undeniable. Something no amount of rice bags can erase." Her eyes burned with determination. "We dig deeper." Ifeanyi hesitated. Each step deeper meant greater risk. Already strange cars idled too long near his home. Already men at the bus stop watched him with eyes that never blinked. But Kanyinsola's fire was contagious. Ifeanyi couldn't shake the image of Alade on stage, smiling as though the world was his plaything. He couldn't shake the voice inside him whispering, "If you stop now, you become part of his story forever." And so, one late night, when his mother and Chica slept, Ifeanyi powered up the cursed laptop again. The glow filled the tiny room, casting shadows on the peeling walls. He clicked through folders, deeper than he'd ever dared, until a strange file appeared. Its label froze his breath. Obioma Okonkwo, surveillance. That was his mother's name. His hands shook as he hovered over the file. Why was her name here, among offshore reports and encrypted ledgers? The walls of his small room seemed to close in, his pulse thundering in his ears. He clicked. The screen went black, then flickered alive with video. Grainy footage filled the frame. His mother at the canteen, serving food, wiping sweat from her brow. Another clip, her walking home with a tired gait. Another, her sitting by Chica's side as he coughed in the night. Every move, every breath, captured, recorded, stored. Alade wasn't just watching him. He was watching his family. Ifeanyi slammed the laptop shut, his chest heaving. His knees buckled under the weight of terror. The secret files weren't just about global markets. They were about people, about control. His own mother was just another folder in Alade's empire. Ifeanyi sat trembling in the dark, the laptop humming on the table like a predator breathing. He had thought he was fighting for justice. Now he realized the war had reached his home. When family becomes collateral, fear grows teeth. The moment Ifeanyi reopened the file, the truth scorched him. The grainy videos flickered across the screen, one after the other, capturing the smallest details of his mother's life. The canteen stove sputtering with smoke, the tired slump of her shoulders as she counted crumpled Naira notes at day's end. Her quiet prayers whispered into the night while she thought no one listened. It wasn't just surveillance, it was intrusion. His mother's dignity, her privacy, stripped and archived like evidence. And then came the footage of Chica, coughing in his sleep, the blanket pulled too tight, his small chest struggling for air. Ifeanyi's entire body went cold, his vision blurred with rage and fear. How long? How long have they been watching? He slammed the laptop shut, his breath ragged. Panic rushed through him like fire, but guilt stabbed deeper. Every step he had taken toward Alade's empire had unknowingly dragged his family into its jaws. Rage trembled in his fists. This isn't mentorship. This isn't destiny. This is prison. The next day, he confronted Kanyinsola. They met in the dim light of their hidden cafe, the hum of generators masking his trembling voice. He's watching them. My mother, my brother, every move. It's all there, in his files. Her face didn't shift with shock. She only sighed, her eyes carrying a sorrow far older than her years. Of course he is. He does it to everyone close to him. Friends, rivals, even his allies. To him, people aren't people. They're risks to be managed. Her calmness stung him. "And you knew?" he hissed. "I suspected," she admitted. "I just didn't think you would find it this soon." Ifeanyi buried his face in his hands. "I can't do this anymore. If I push further, it won't just be me. He'll destroy my family. And for what? For a truth people don't even believe? They love him. They call him a savior." Silence stretched, heavy with despair. Then Kanyinsola leaned forward, her voice low, burning. "If you stop, He wins forever. That's what you need to understand. He feeds on fear. He counts on silence. He builds his empire on the backs of those too scared to speak. Her words pierced him, but the fear in his chest refused to ease. He thought of Mama, her worn smile, her fragile hope in Alade's blessings. He thought of Chica, his thin arms clinging to him at night. What, right, did he have to risk them? Yet, when he pictured Alade's face, smiling at the gala, preaching loyalty, something hardened inside him. Survival wasn't enough anymore. Survival without dignity was another form of death. That night at home, his mother noticed the shadows in his eyes. She sat beside him as he pretended to study, her voice soft. "Ify, you're not yourself. You don't laugh anymore. You don't even sleep. What is it?" He forced a smile, hiding the storm behind his teeth. "Nothing, Mama, just schoolwork." But her hand lingered on his, her eyes filled with the quiet wisdom of a woman who had survived too much. She said nothing more, but he felt the weight of her unspoken worry. Ifeanyi's chest tightened. He couldn't tell her. He couldn't let her carry the burden of a truth that might shatter her. The suffocation grew. He walked the streets with newspapers under his arm, but he felt like a ghost drifting between two worlds. One of survival, one of secrets. Every SUV that slowed near him sent his pulse racing. Every time Chica coughed, he heard Alade's shadow breathing over their home. But duty, that invisible chain, pulled him forward. His life was no longer just his own. When he met Kanyinsola again, her eyes were sharp with determination. She spread out blueprints of the skyscraper on the cafe table, her finger tracing a hidden line. "You've been leaking scraps. Useful, but not enough. To truly hurt him, we need the heart. The vault." "The vault?" Ifeanyi asked, his voice barely a whisper. Kanyinsola nodded. "My father keeps his most dangerous files offline, stored in a digital vault inside the skyscraper itself. He doesn't trust the cloud, doesn't trust his allies. Everything, the true scale of his empire, his leverage over politicians, the surveillance networks, it's all there." Ifeanyi's throat went dry. "And how do you expect us to reach that?" Her eyes flickered with defiance. "Through the passage only I know. A secret way into the vault that even his guards don't monitor. I grew up in that building, remember? I know its skeleton." He stared at her, heart pounding. The plan was madness. It was dangerous beyond imagination. But her words echoed like a drumbeat. "If you stop, he wins forever." Kanyinsola's voice hardened, her hand slamming on the... "We won't just leak this time. We'll make him what we've taken. He'll know the empire he built is no longer untouched." Behind the glass wall, there are cracks, the skyscraper lifting the restless... To most, it was just another... But for Ifeanyi, standing in its shadow, it was a fortress. Kanyinsola led the way, her steps quick, her breaths shallow. She guided Ifeanyi to a side entrance, an almost invisible panel disguised as part of the building's sleek exterior. "When I was a child," she whispered, pressing her palm against the sensor, "I used to play hide-and-seek with the guards. This was my passage. Tonight, it's our only chance." The door clicked open. A sliver of cold, sterile air escaped, wrapping around them like a warning. Inside, the corridor stretched long and silent, dimly lit, its walls humming faintly with electricity. They moved quickly, their footsteps softened by carpet. The passage twisted, finally opening into a cavernous room. What Ifeanyi saw made his breath falter. Rows upon rows of servers lined the chamber, glowing with blinking lights like restless stars. Screens stretched across the walls, filled with graphs, codes, shifting currencies, and maps pulsing with movement. It was as though they had stepped inside the bloodstream of power itself. "This is it," Kanyinsola whispered, her face half lit by the glow. "The vault." Ifeanyi's hands shook as he pulled out the USB drives. He plugged them into the nearest port, his eyes darting over files, transactions leaping across continents, shell companies appearing and disappearing, accounts named after countries and hidden islands. Billions moved silently across screens, untouchable, unseen. He copied feverishly, each progress bar a prayer, Each beep of completion a heartbeat of resistance. But then, suddenly, the lights flickered. The servers hummed louder, the air shifting with tension. "Someone's here," Kanyinsola whispered, eyes wide. They ducked behind one of the server racks, just as the door slid open. Heavy footsteps entered, slow, deliberate. Then came the voice, smooth, commanding, unmistakable. "Alade Omoboriowo." Ifeanyi's entire body froze. Alade strolled to the central console, his reflection mirrored on the glowing screens. His voice was calm, confident, as he spoke into a headset. "Yes, the leaks caused ripples," he said. "But ripples don't sink ships. By next quarter, we'll launch the new currency. Entire governments will rely on it. They won't be able to move without my permission." A pause. His tone sharpened. "Do you understand what that means? It won't just be money. It will be obedience. Every budget, every contract, every salary, flowing through me. Africa will not just trade in my currency. It will kneel to it." The words slammed into Ifeanyi like a storm. This wasn't greed anymore. This was domination, entire nations enslaved through invisible chains of data. Beside him, Kanyinsola's fists clenched, her face pale but burning with defiance. Alade leaned closer to the console, his voice low. "Yes, yes, of course I have leverage. Presidents, ministers, CEOs, they're all in my pocket. If they resist, they collapse. If they obey, they rise. That's the law of the new world." Ifeanyi's chest heaved, rage rising in him like fire. But he couldn't move, couldn't make a sound. One wrong breath, and the empire builder would know his daughter, and a boy from Ojuelegba, were crouched in the shadows, stealing the very blood of his empire. Finally, Alade ended the call, his figure bathed in the glow of the servers. For a long moment, he simply stood, staring at the screens, as though gazing into his own reflection. Then he turned, walking out with the same deliberate calmness with which he had entered. The door slid shut. Silence returned, but it was the kind of silence that screamed. Ifeanyi and Kanyinsola exhaled, trembling. They had not only glimpsed Alade's empire, they had witnessed his true ambition, a vision vast enough to enslave continents. With shaking hands, Ifeanyi checked the drives. The data was there. The evidence was theirs. "We have it," he whispered, his voice breaking. "We can bring him down." Kanyinsola's eyes flickered between fear and determination. "Not yet. We need to be careful. Evidence this big doesn't just expose him. It threatens everyone who depends on him. Once we release it, there's no going back." They slipped out the passage, into the Lagos night, their hearts racing. The servers hummed behind them like restless beasts, unaware their secrets had just been stolen. By the time Ifeanyi reached home, dawn was already painting the sky pale. His mother and brother slept peacefully, unaware of the storm he carried in his bag. He tucked the drives carefully under his mat, the weight of them pressing against the floor like buried treasure, or a buried curse. Exhaustion dragged him under. His dreams were a blur of screens, maps, and his mother's face dissolving into streams of code. But when he woke, sunlight filling the room, his hand reached instinctively beneath the mat. The drives were gone. Ifeanyi's heart stopped. The evidence that could end Alade's empire had vanished, swallowed by shadows before the battle had even begun. Evidence lost is hope stolen. Ifeanyi's heart thudded against his ribs as he tore through the small room, scattering blankets, lifting the mat, overturning his school bag. The USB drives? Gone. The very proof that could unravel Alade's empire had vanished like smoke. His breath came in gasps, his palms slicked with sweat. No, no, no. He checked again, as if they might magically reappear. Nothing. Just the bare floor and his mother's quiet breathing in the corner. Panic swallowed him whole. Had Alade known all along? Had his spies followed him from the skyscraper? If so, then not only were the drives gone, his family was already in danger. When he met Kanyinsola later, his voice cracked as he recounted the loss. She listened, her face grim, her eyes shadowed. "It wasn't him directly," she said, shaking her head. "If my father had found those drives himself, you wouldn't be standing here. They were stolen by someone in his circle, one of his hounds. He's tightening the net. Her certainty was cold comfort. Ifeanyi buried his head in his hands. Then what do we do now? Without evidence, we have nothing. It's all over. But Kanyinsola jaw hardened. No, it's just beginning. My father thinks fear will silence us. We'll find another way. The other way arrived in the form of a sudden announcement. Within 48 hours, Alade called a press conference. Invitations flooded media houses, schools, and social organizations. The headline, Youth Empowerment Initiative, the future in their hands. The grand atrium of the skyscraper was transformed into a stage. Giant banners bearing Alade's smiling face hung above polished marble floors. Television crews set up tripods. Journalists buzzed. Rows of youth in bright uniforms filled the hall, their eyes gleaming with hope. And at the center of it all stood Ifeanyi. Alade had placed him there, front row, spotlighted, dressed in a suit he had never worn before. The billionaire's hand rested lightly on his shoulder, guiding him like a master parading his prize. The crowd roared as Alade began his speech, his voice smooth and magnetic. Young people, he declared, are the heartbeat of this nation. They are our strength, our future, our pride. And we must empower them, not just with words, but with opportunity. That is why I am here today, to announce a new program, one that will shape leaders out of dreamers. Applause thundered. Cameras flashed like lightning. And look, Alade continued, his voice booming, look at this young man beside me, Ifeanyi Okonkwo. Once a boy on the streets, selling newspapers to survive. Today, he stands as proof that with vision and support, no dream is too small. He is my protege, my inspiration, the future of Africa. The audience erupted, chanting his name, clapping, smiling. But inside, Ifeanyi felt suffocated. The air tasted like poison. He was no protege. He was a pawn, a shield, a tool in Alade's endless theater. The irony seared him. The same world that should have condemned Alade for corruption now cheered him for generosity. The truth, it seemed, wasn't enough. People preferred the story Alade fed them. Beside him, Kanyinsola leaned close, her whisper cutting through the noise. Do you see what he's doing? He's turning you into his shield. As long as you stand here, no one will ever believe the leaks. You're the face of his empire now. Her words dug deep, igniting something inside him. He couldn't let this continue. He couldn't keep hiding behind silence while being paraded as proof of Alade's benevolence. For the first time, he decided to act, not from shadows, not from behind screens, but in front of the world. He would speak. The cameras turned toward him as Alade gestured for applause to quiet. And now, the billionaire announced, smiling broadly, let us hear from this young man himself. Let him inspire you, as he has inspired me. Microphones tilted toward Ifeanyi. Lights blazed hot on his face. Dozens of cameras blinked, waiting to capture every word. His throat dried. His heart hammered. He could feel his mother watching through the television at home. He could picture Chica, smiling faintly from his bed. This was his chance, his moment. He opened his mouth. The words trembled on his tongue. The truth is... But before the syllables escaped, a hand pressed firmly against his shoulder. Alade's hand. The grip was soft to the audience's eyes, but heavy as chains to Ifeanyi. The billionaire leaned in, his voice low enough that only Ifeanyi could hear. Not yet, boy. Not here. Cameras flashed. The crowd cheered. But Ifeanyi's voice, the truth he carried, was trapped once again, smothered beneath the hand of the man he had sworn to bring down. The loudest silences echo louder than screams. The hall erupted with applause as Ifeanyi lowered his head. His words swallowed back into his throat. Cameras captured his nervous smile, microphones caught his silence, and the world interpreted it as humility. But inside, he was crumbling. His moment to speak had slipped through his fingers, stolen by Alade's quiet grip. That night, Lagos buzzed with headlines praising the billionaire. Alade Omoboriowo launches Youth Empowerment Program. Pictures of Ifeanyi standing beside him flooded the internet. his face plastered across blogs, papers, and screens as the poster child of Alade's vision. To the world, he was now part of the empire. But in the shadows, despair chewed at him. He felt he had failed, not just himself, but his mother, his brother, Kanyinsola, and every soul suffocating under the weight of Alade's invisible chains. When he met Kanyinsola later, his shoulders sagged. "It's over. I couldn't speak. He owns the stage. He owns the story." But she shook her head, her eyes fierce. "You think I didn't plan for this?" From her bag, she pulled out a slim hard drive. "I backed up the files before the drives disappeared. Everything. Every transaction. Every surveillance video. Every plan for his new currency. I knew he would come for them. That's why I made copies." Hope flickered in Ifeanyi's chest like a dying candle relit. "Then we still have a chance?" "Not with leaks. Not with blogs," she said firmly. "We've already seen what happens. He bends the story until people cheer for him. We can't fight his empire with news. We need to fight it with imagination." He frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "We make art," she replied. "A story too powerful to be dismissed. A film. We blend truth with fiction so perfectly that the world can't tell the difference. They won't know if it's real or dramatized, but it will spread, and inside it, the truth will burn." And so they began. In dim rooms and borrowed studios, they stitched the files into a documentary. Not dry reports, but a living story. They combined real footage with reenactments, anonymous testimonies with blurred faces, financial graphs with poetic narration. They painted a portrait of a billionaire who wasn't just building wealth, but chaining nations. Ifeanyi lent his voice to the narration, trembling but strong, speaking not as a victim, but as a witness. His words carried the weight of the boy who once sold headlines, but now created them. When the film was ready, they didn't release it through traditional media. Instead, they uploaded it anonymously, feeding it into social platforms where youth scrolled endlessly. They disguised it as entertainment, then as gossip, then as news. It spread like wildfire, carried by curiosity, then by conviction. The response was electric. From Lagos to Nairobi, Accra to Johannesburg, the documentary pulsed through phones and laptops. Young people debated it in cafes, whispered about it in classrooms, replayed it in crowded living rooms. Hashtags surged, poems were written, songs sampled its narration. Was it fiction? Was it fact? No one knew for sure. But the suspicion it planted was undeniable, and suspicion is the seed of revolution. Alade could not sue. It would mean acknowledging its truth. He could not silence it. It lived on too many servers, too many phones. For the first time, his control wavered. The empire he built on obedience and image began to crack. Not from force, but from doubt. Investors hesitated. Politicians distanced themselves. His speeches drew fewer cheers. His charity drives were met with questions instead of gratitude. The golden image of Alade Omoboriowo no longer shone. It flickered under the weight of shadows. Ifeanyi, at last, returned to the streets of Ojuelegba. Not as a boy defeated, but as a boy transformed. He sold newspapers again, but this time with a new dignity. For once, the headlines he cried out carried the echo of his own courage. One morning, he unfolded the fresh stack and froze. Across the front page, in bold letters, "The age of secrets is ending." He smiled faintly, handing the paper to a customer. The boy, who once only dreamed of writing history, had now helped shape it, even if no one knew his name. But destiny never loosens its grip so easily. As he shouted headlines that morning, a sleek, black SUV rolled slowly past the newsstand. Its tinted window slid down just enough for him to see. Alade. The billionaire's eyes met his, calm, unreadable, and then a smile. Not the smile of a defeated man, but of one who waits, one who plots, one who still believes the game is his. The SUV pulled away, vanishing into traffic. Ifeanyi stood frozen, the newspaper still in his hand, his throat tight. Has the boy truly escaped the billionaire's shadow? Or has the real game only just begun? What would you do if you were in Ifeanyi's place? Stay silent or risk everything? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button if this story kept you hooked, and subscribe for more billionaire dramas every week. And remember, sometimes the biggest secrets hide in plain sight. Will you be ready to see them?